Welcome, everyone, to Dr. Becky's clinic, and to host the show, Daniel Whited from Denver, Colorado.
Welcome, everybody, to Dr. Becky's clinic, where basically the bottom line is this. The world is her waiting room, and you get the opportunity of hearing firsthand insight and information on how the dynamic ingredients of Sisel products can impact your life and those friends and family and individuals you bump into when they're going through challenges. They can get the help they need. Just give a little bit of background on Dr. Becky and what gives her the insights. She comes from a place of experience. And part of her experience was, she was a board-certified gastroenterologist, and was the first female accepted and to graduate the University of Arizona in gastroenterology program. Practiced for 13 years out of Tucson, Arizona. And during that practice, where we're helping people get healthier as she possibly could through traditional medicine, she was introduced to nutrition. And like a lot of us, it had to come through the industry of networking. And that was 15 years ago when that took place. After a few years of networking, she was able to retire and has been retired from traditional medicine for the last 10 years to pursue all natural health modalities and network marketing full time. And let's just put it this way, that's a big deal. While doing networking, she was also a seven-figure earner, and she's an internationally recognized speaker and author dedicated to creating global movement to help people eliminate their financial, emotional, and physical pains. You're going through something. We've seen a lot of people get a lot of relief with Tom's products and what's going on there. Dr. Becky, welcome to Dr. Becky's clinic. We're glad you're here tonight. Say hi to everybody, then we'll jump in and start off with some fun questions.
And thanks, DW, and thanks, Rob Cohen. I really appreciate you guys, and thanks to the audience. I really am blessed to have all of your time and attention, especially after a long holiday weekend if you were here in the U.S. And so I enjoy these calls. It's here for your educational purposes. It'll be recorded so you can share it with people. And I just want to bring in certain products every week and their nutritional value and how they work synergistically within our body to support our quality of life. So thank you. And DW, I'll have you take it away because you and I do the interview style, and I really like that because it makes it very comfortable.
Oh, it's a blast, and it's just a lot of fun, and we just get to drill down and kind of find out a few things about products. And just saying, with the Triangle of Life and the TSX and the Sizzling, you absolutely just nailed it to the wall. We've received a lot of information, a lot of traction from those calls, and even on the playback mode. But tonight we're going to jump into a subject that affects every single person on this planet, whether it's a child that's going through some challenges of concentrating in school, maybe even a student that's trying to get better grades in college, or someone's just trying to just stay focused and tuned in on what's going on in their life when it comes to their traditional job, or is it someone moves on up into some senior ages and they walk into a room and they're like, ooh, what did I go into this room for? They walk into a closet. What am I doing here? And we get into brain vitality, one of my favorite products to discuss and talk about. Dr. Beck, it's made a huge impact on my dad's life as well. And tonight we're talking about just even brain supplementation and how the ingredients of brain supplementation can impact someone's life. But before we go into that, though, let's kind of jump into some of the challenges that people might have. And with that, what are some of the causes of what we refer to as brain fog, or some call it memory loss in general? And then can you talk a little bit about the statistics surrounding Alzheimer's and dementia?
Absolutely. And I just want to preface the conversation with the fact I'm not a neurologist, I'm not a neurosurgeon. However, even in my gastrointestinal practice, I saw a lot of patients that came in that were just not clear or focused or had good memory. They just seemed to be in that fog. And there was a lot of that. It seemed to be a pretty common thing. And a lot of the doctors saw that. And to me, when you hear me talk, I talk a lot about toxicity, nutritional depletion, sometimes nutritional bankruptcy. And it really does all fit together. I mean, it really does have an effect, not only just on our, our cells and organs below the neck, but it has everything to do above the neck in terms of like crossing the blood-brain barrier and affecting the ability for the synapses to work in the brain, the neurons to work in the brain, the cells to communicate in that regard. So when I was in practice, I saw, certain diseases of the liver that would cause a lot of brain fog, because if your liver is accumulating fat, if it's accumulating toxicity, it's nutritionally depleted so the toxins can't get out, then you would build up something called ammonia in the bloodstream, and it would go to the brain. It would cause something called encephalopathy, which would lead to confusion. And then there were certain pulmonary disorders. If people were dealing with sleep apnea, where at night they weren't breathing as comfortably as they could be, so they would stop breathing, maybe up to 100 times in the evening, where they weren't getting the oxygen to the brain. So they'd wake up with a headache, they'd wake up very disoriented, and throughout the day they were very fatigued. So the pulmonary system could be a factor, the liver could be a factor, the adrenal glands could be a factor, nutritional depletion was a factor, being overweight because you couldn't just breathe, normally too. You'd have to sleep on your side or different positions to get good oxygen into the system, a little bit different than sleep apnea. But then there's also this whole school of thought. And the reason I'm mentioning all this to all of you is because we're going to come full circle with not just brain vitality but triangle of life. There's a whole school of thought about type 3 diabetes. And this is very interesting. There seems to be an insulin resistance that happens in the brain with people that are type 2 diabetics, where that insulin resistance directly affects the synapses and the cells of the brain, so that insulin resistance does not allow the glucose to get into the brain cells. So there's less cell-to-cell communication. Therefore, there's less concentration, there's less memory, there's less mental agility, so people are caught in that fog. There's a lot of other theories in terms of why we go down this path, but to me, especially with the kids, and you mentioned it, we're dealing with this whole epidemic of concentration issues with children. Their focus is off. They become very disengaged, very disoriented. They act out. To me, has everything to do with nutritional issues, has everything to do with toxicity. When we don't address that, the brain doesn't work. And there's tons of studies out there that if you just give these children minerals, good ionic, essential minerals, trace minerals to fuel the brain, and then they're absorbing vitamins better, and then you give them antioxidants, and then you teach them how to eat well and stay hydrated with the right things, that the brain chemistry starts to realign. And all of a sudden they sit up in school, and they're focused, and they look at the board, and they listen to the teacher, and they don't bug their friends. It's really dramatic if you look at the studies, and they've done this in prisons with young adults, and even like with kids that were put into certain situations where they were incarcerated, but then they changed their diet and they changed what they were doing to supplement their brain, and it does make a difference. And now in this country, because Alzheimer's is a very common term that we hear, it is something we do have to recognize. Some experts say that it's not preventable, it's not curable, and I disagree with both of that. I think that everything is preventable, and I do think that pretty much everything on the planet is curable. However, there may be certain genetic issues that we don't know how to deal with yet. We're just not there from a medical standpoint. But if you just look at prevention, we can do things to support our brain chemistry and to support our body in general so that we have bioavailable nutrients that keep us in balance from head to toe. But the statistics are something worth listening to. Right now there's 5.3 million people diagnosed right now in the U.S. with Alzheimer's dementia, and 5.1 million are over the age of 65. So it's pretty much an older type of disease state, but it usually sets in earlier, and there are signs where you can pick up the fact that we need to nourish the brain to help with this. 2/3 of the people that are diagnosed are women, and it's the 6th leading cause of death right now in the U.S. And in terms of the money that's being spent on Alzheimer's, just last year alone was over $226 billion in supporting people with caretakers and homes and unfortunately medications. But they're predicting in 2050 over $1.1 trillion to be spent on Alzheimer's dementia. So we're dealing with a whole wide array of issues related to the brain and cognition and memory and concentration and learning and just the vitality of that metabolic area of the body. And it can start with children, it can go to adolescence, middle age, old age. So we're all in the realm of being affected potentially. So when I started to look at brain vitality, I was really amazed at the different nutrients because they work synergistically together, and a lot of homeostasis that goes on with this product. And it was, always being reformed. And so from what I understand, right before I started here, there were some definite additions to the product that made it even more premier and more superior than anything that's out on the market. So just to give you kind of an overview of where we're starting, and just remember, as I give you information on different nutrients within brain vitality, it may not, number one, click, but then I'm going to bring you all around to see how it does click with where you need to address other areas of the body to support the brain, and that's really important. So back to you, DW.
I tell you, that's very, very, very insightful information, and I just love it, the fact that the research you've done, Tom's done, and the results that we're getting is, it can make an impact and make a difference. Now, brain vitality, as you just mentioned, has some amazing ingredients in it. Let's start with one that's very interesting, and I'm kind of anxious to hear what you're going to share with that, but the Curcuma Longa. And so do you mind just addressing that for a moment?
Curcuma Longa is one of the most healthiest spices on the planet. And it's interesting because I'm very familiar with this because my son's father, who is a triple-boarded medical doctor, extremely brilliant, that comes from a long line of brilliant individuals in his family, came from Madras, India. And so curcuma, turmeric, curry was their staple. That's what they ate all the time. And the research on curcuma and Curcuma Longa is extensive, especially when it comes to the brain. And, I only have the testimonial of that whole family is absolutely brilliant, and the fact that my son is brilliant and he loves curry. I know that's kind of an extrapolation, but if you look at the studies they've done in India where they looked at people that eat, with the curry, because remember, the curcuma is the main ingredient. It's the main active ingredient of turmeric. And when you cook with it, it gives that yellow color to the curry. And it has a very distinct flavor. It's very bioavailable to the body and to the brain. When they looked at people in India and some other areas in that region that were eating curry and, cooking with that spice, much less incidence and prevalence of dementia, significant, like off the charts. So much less in terms of that issue, but just in general, their cognition, if they gave them certain tests to check their cognition, way off the charts high. And so we know it's an anti-inflammatory. We know it has great antioxidant properties, and that's the other thing. We talk almost every single week about free radicals and the damage to DNA and the damage to our body from these free radicals, causing the ability for the cells to not be able to communicate. It happens in the brain just like it happens everywhere else in our body. So if you have an antioxidant and an anti-inflammatory that can cross the blood-brain barrier and work in those areas, then you're supporting cognition and memory and concentration, and you're allowing for attentiveness of the person, which they also found in studies, just giving them different tests. So it's an anti-inflammatory for the brain. It decreases oxidative stress of the brain. But here's what's really interesting is that they're seeing in some studies, some early animal studies, that it's decreasing something called beta amyloid plaques. When you talk to experts on what's happening to the brain when Alzheimer's dementia sets in, you have something called beta amyloid plaques. Think of it as almost like a sticky protein that's clogging the ability for the brain waves to work. And then there's something called tangles, and the tangles can also develop a protein called tau, T-A-U, which has some good effects when everything is normal, but if the cell starts to die, then the tau protein starts to tangle, and it decreases the ability for the neurons and the synapses to communicate. So there's decreased cell-to-cell communication, but it also clogs the ability for the cells of the brain to bring nutrients in. So remember, bioavailability is an issue. We always want to have bioavailability to all our cells, but if it happens at the brain and then there's the death of those cells, then that escalates people's risk of having a significant memory issue, including Alzheimer's dementia. The other thing they've done with curcuma, they've studied so many different facets because of its anti-inflammatory capabilities. Great results with people that have arthritic issues, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, asthma, and because a lot of inflammatory conditions affect the skin. You've heard of psoriasis, you've heard of eczema, even certain types of acne. What they're finding is you can orally ingest the curcumin, and it will have a topical positive effect. So this is not just about, the brain, but also systemically. But it still all fits together because of its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant capabilities. There's a lot of great things about it being heart healthy. So to me, it's a phenomenal nutrient. You can add it additionally to your food. So if you're doing brain vitality, you can still cook with it. It's not going to hurt you. It's never going to become a toxic issue. There's great studies regarding cancer. We never make claims on these calls or as a company about cancer. However, you can go online. You can go to PubMed.gov. You can do all kinds of individualized research about what this particular nutrient is doing in the realm of cancer. So to me, great nutrient, the highest bioavailability in our product, over 6 to 8 times what anything else is out there currently. So again, we're bringing something that's the best of the best. We have bioavailability, a super concentrated formula that's crossing the blood-brain barrier to support our concentration and our memory. Back to you, DW.
Well, that's pretty. It sounds to me like it's not a matter if, but it's a matter of when you're going to need brain supplementation, and so that's kind of what is getting my attention here. But here's what we're thinking now. If you would just take a few moments and just elaborate on some of the other main ingredients of what Sisel's Brain Vitality has in it, and what Tom's put together and his team, and not just the other ingredients, but kind of maybe narrow down a little bit of what it can do and how it can supplement and support your brain health.
Absolutely. All of these nutrients, I'm going to talk about 4 additional nutrients within the product in addition to the curcumin that are very important, all with substantial research and science backing them. I've never seen anything like this. I've looked at a lot of different products for brain chemistry and just to support concentration and focus, but I've never seen such an extensive array of ingredients with such extensive science to back what it does to allow our brain to liven up. And like you said, it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when, when or if. Either way, I know after this weekend I needed some extra brain vitality when I walked into the office. And I can definitely tell a difference when I'm taking it if I'm not taking it. So you will recognize the fact that one of the nutrients called fenugreek seed is a really interesting nutrient. It works very quickly. It's been studied, again, in India, the Middle East, because it's used in a lot of their foods. Decreased amount of dementia in those areas, more cognitive function in those areas. There's certain nutrients within the seed that support just overall brain health. It's very high in magnesium and manganese, very high in copper, B6. It's good fiber, also very good with iron content. The other thing that's really interesting about this seed is they started to look at diabetes, just type 2 diabetes with the seed. And they ran some great trials where it's showing decreased insulin resistance. And so for people that are dealing with sugar issues, it's lowering their sugar compared to the control group by over 46%. Okay, why is that important? So we'll bring it full circle to the first question in terms of what is maybe linked to dementia and brain fog. Well, we have this whole theory about type 3 diabetes, insulin resistance of the brain. The fenugreek seed that's showing that you're helping that insulin resistance, you're allowing for more glucose to go into the cell, including the brain cells, to allow for more cognitive function, more memory, more attentiveness, therefore allowing the body and the brain to becoming into more balance with that effect of the glucose. So it's not just, one thing. Remember, we're a body as a whole. And when I trained in traditional medicine, when I trained at Hahnemann Hospital and University in Philadelphia, it was also a DO school, so osteopathic school as well as traditional MD school. What I loved about the osteopaths, and I still have tremendous respect for them, is they always treated the body as a whole. Everything had pieces of the puzzle that fit together. So in traditional medicine, we tend to go down this path of going, okay, you've got a brain problem, go see a neurologist. Well, you have diabetes, go see an endocrinologist. You've got a lung problem, see pulmonary, GI. Just think about the subspecialists that are in traditional medicine. Now, osteopathic has their subspecialties, but in general, they're taught to treat the body as a whole. So why wouldn't diabetes affect the brain? Why wouldn't liver disease affect the brain? Why wouldn't sleep apnea and pulmonary disorders affect the brain? So everything is in synergy, but it could be the bad domino effect, and you can reverse it by recognizing how everything's interconnected. I think that's really, really important. So when you look at the fenugreek seed and its effect, its positive effects with research and science on diabetes and how it could potentially address that type 3 diabetes of the brain, we've got something really special there. Another ingredient that's very special is called acetylcholine. Remember choline? You probably have heard choline being a brain food. And when I grew up with my grandparents, because they partially raised me, because my mom and dad were so busy in the pharmacy business, so Grandma and Grandpa, they had a hotel, and they used to cook a lot of different foods for their patrons. But one thing my grandpa always gave me was fish. He's like, fish has choline in it. It's a brain food. It's a brain food. He just drilled that into my head. But you know what? Choline is a food because you need acetylcholine and phosphatidylcholine to allow for the synapses in your brain to communicate. It's the cell-to-cell communication. So the acetylcholine that's in our product, it crosses into that blood-brain barrier, and it produces more acetylcholine and more of the phosphatidylcholine. So it livens up the brain. So your attention span is really good. You don't have as many distractions. Your motivation is better. There's also tons of studies going on right now with Parkinson's and what it does to decrease the damage to the brain in Parkinson's. Also studies for ADHD and ADD, increasing the learning capacity of kids that are on acetylcholine. So another phenomenal ingredient, there's magnesium threonate. Here's another good one. Magnesium crosses directly to the brain, and it's one of those minerals that's super important for cell-to-cell communication and bioavailability. The studies are premier, and a lot of them come out of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and that is a big one. So you can go online and look up some of the studies there, and then you combine it with our last main ingredient called DMAE bitartrate. Long history of research with this. And guys, you don't have to remember the names. You can just, again, build your belief with what I'm sharing with you. You can look up the nutrients. You can listen to the recorded call. You can share this with anybody. Just know what I'm sharing with you is to just build your belief on what Tom Sr. and Tom Jr. are doing to bring you the best nutrients that deliver the best results based on substantial science. So the DMAE has been shown to increase memory in populations and to increase concentration, to increase brain cell health, and also studies on analytical skills. It's interesting. They took subsets of patients or just people in general that felt analytically they were not doing well testing, or maybe there's something with their work, and they tested their skills when they were on the bitartrate, and it increased exponentially. Another nutrient that increases acetylcholine. So remember, choline, brain food. We've got it in so many different nutrients that all work together to support concentration, memory, attentiveness, our focus, our clarity, our ability to not be distracted, our ability to sleep better, to get up in the morning and be a more beneficial participant with our family, with our spouse, with the workplace, and to just do that again and again and again. The one thing I want to stress, because when I do these calls, every nutrient and every single product I pick, I want you to understand that they're all safe to use together, but there's certain staples that need to be used always together. The triangle of life, to me, is the basis of this company. It's the basis of delivering your body bioavailable antioxidants, adaptogens that help your body adapt to stress, physical stress, emotional stress, mental stress, also delivering all the trace essential ionic minerals, and then allowing for vitamins that are in the product to be massively absorbed, and these incredible anti-inflammatory properties of the triangle of life. When you're giving the body the basics of the triangle of life, and then you add in brain vitality, and then you add in some of the other products we talked about, TSX and Sisel and Accelerator, and there's so much more to come, you're allowing the body to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And healthier body is going to continue to get healthier, and you can start to replace your body one cell at a time. If you didn't start doing this, your body's eventually just going to wither and just shrivel up, and it's not going to have the capability to regenerate itself because we're not getting it in society. We're not getting it into our foods. So we need to do something with high-grade, superior nutrition, and that's why this all fits in with what we're offering with Triangle of Life and brain vitality. So you can take it to the nth degree with that. So I don't want to overwhelm people, DW, because I get all fired up when I learn about this stuff and I kind of go off on a tangent. But I know you have a great testimonial on the line this evening, and I love to bring on testimonials for every call. so that people will feel the human touch in terms of what they truly experience, because their story is their story. Nobody's going to steal their story because it's real and it's passionate, and that's what they're going to share to go out there and make a difference in this world. So I'll let you do the introduction.
Well, and Dr. Becky, I'm not so sure that you need to take any brain vitality. Your brain is so switched on smart. I've gotten text message going, she's so incredibly smart, and we just love that. We love the way that you can know the ingredients, know the terms, and bring it to us to where we can kind of wrap our brains around it. So thank you for your awesome brain and how you bring the information to us. And you bet, we've got Mary Zook is on the phone with us tonight, and probably a case study, testimonial. It's just ongoing situation, but it has brought tears to my eyes more than once hearing her talk about it. So, Mary Zook, welcome to Dr. Becky's Clinic, and welcome to the call. Share with us what's been going on concerning brain vitality in your family.
Good evening, DW. Can you hear me?
Mary, we can hear you, and you sound marvelous. Welcome to the call.
Well, thank you, and hello to everyone out there in the Sisel Nation. I am just sitting here with my mouth hanging open, literally. Everything you're saying, Dr. Becky, is making so much sense with a little bit of research that I have done just for my own use. It's awesome. I think I could talk with you for hours. But anyway, to give our story, my husband was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia 10 years ago. He was hospitalized for 3 months. Actually, his major breakdown occurred when our baby girl was diagnosed and with a large VSD in her heart. So at 3 months of age, she had an open heart surgery. And he was not able to handle the stress of seeing his baby girl basically looking like she's dying. So he ended up in the state of Indiana in a state institution in a lockdown unit. And needless to say, that was a really rough time in our lives. We were told his diagnosis, and the doctor, very compassionate man, sat down with us and said, as a couple, we need to face this for the rest of our lives. And he said, there are several things that will need to be in place. He said, Levi will never be a daddy to his kids. I will probably have to be the head of the home. He will never be able to hold a job more than maybe 5 hours a day, and he will never be able to hold a job that has any kind of loud noises or does any kind of intricate thinking, as in, you're talking like measurements and so forth. I remember that we walked out of the doctor's office, and just before we left, the doctor said, I do not believe that you are accepting the what was the word he used, just the hugeness of this illness. And I looked at him, and we looked at each other, and it was like there was really nothing to say, because to us it sounded like he was delivering a death sentence to our family. We had 2 boys and then the baby girl. I remember walking out of the doctor's office, and I looked at Levi, and he said, now what? And I said, honey, it's a diagnosis. We're going to go home, and we're going to live our life one day at a time. We can do this. So we did, and we did a lot of research. We were actually with a company, with a clinic out in Illinois that worked specifically with mental illness, and Levi was doing very well. So fast forward to 2 years ago, 2.5, we had hit another slump, and I felt like I was losing my husband again. There were some reoccurring symptoms that I was no longer able to ignore, and I called Glick's Natural Foods, which happened to be Marianne's grandmother. I had no idea that Marianne was going to answer. She was a friend from my past. And again, fast forwarding, we kept calling back and forth, and she said, Mary, can you keep hanging on? And I said, you know what, we really can't. So I went to the psychiatrist. I told her I'm losing him. And she prescribed Zoloft. So I purchased the Zoloft, and I opened the bottle. In all honesty, I was going to give this. There was no hesitation in my mind. I knew that it was do or die for our situation at this time. The first side effect for Zoloft was suicide. And it scared me, because that was exactly what I was afraid of. And this is where people usually say, okay, so you're against medication. You don't take medication. I'm going to just for the record, I need to make that very clear. I am not against medication if it's something that somebody has to have. I really want people to work with their doctors. I called my doctor. I said, I am totally terrified. And she encouraged me that if I am not comfortable with that I can look at other options. So I would strongly encourage anyone out there, if your doctor is willing to work with you, I strongly encourage you to work with them. So Marianne was able to go up to Massachusetts to meet Tom Maurer, and I will always feel indebted to everybody that night. It was in February, and it was very cold. And I was down here at our little phone booth, and Marianne was in Massachusetts, and she called me, and she left DW's number, and she said, would you call him? So it was at 11 o'clock at night that I actually became a Sisel distributor, and DW and Helen were there for me. I couldn't even remember my Social Security number. Remember that, DW? I had no idea what it was. I had to run all the way up to the house to find it. And it was one of the darkest times of my life. So what was most amazing to me through all that was Marianne shared the story. Tom cared enough to send someone like 20 miles out of their way to bring a bottle of Brain Vitality down to this little Amish woman that he probably didn't think he would ever meet and didn't even know if it was going to work. But he cared enough. And, that's really the heart that's at the helm of this little company. So Marianne came home. She gave the Brain Vitality. And, if you've ever gone through mental illness with a loved one, you don't really put a lot of hope or stock into anything. You always grasp for something, but it's not that you really truly believe that it will work. I mean, seriously, that's where a person, I think it's a way of protecting ourselves from being hurt and disappointed. So Marianne and I were back and forth. She would call and she'd say, how are you doing? It was 2 weeks that I said, I am now ready to talk about it. And she said, can I know what you're seeing? And I said, the best way to describe it is the light went back in his eyes. I looked into his eyes, and there was a light. So I often get asked the question, so how are you today? That's now 2.5 years ago. I mean, did you just take Brain Vitality and ride off into the sunset on a honeymoon for the rest of the life? And I said, no. Let's be realistic. If my husband was diagnosed with diabetes, I would not give him an insulin shot and figure that he's going to be okay for the rest of his life. I love what you said, Dr. Becky, the whole body needs to be taken into consideration, because I need to be careful that my husband gets enough of sleep, that he gets the proper diet, that he is hydrated, that he is well fed emotionally and spiritually. We need to take the whole thing together. And when Super Mega Plus came out, that was another time that we had hit another rough spot. I usually call it like coming out of remission. It almost seems like his brain does go into remission, and that is common for schizophrenia. And then we'll hit a time when it seems like nothing is firing right anymore. And Super Mega has done wonders for that. If I know that we have something stressful coming up, I will give Levi 3 Brain Vitality and 3 Super Megas morning and night. And I always feel like he reaches a level of calmness when I do that. So that's my story. One parting advice that I have to anyone who is walking the journey with a loved one that is struggling with mental illness is love them. Love them unconditionally. And when it's hardest, greater is the power that is within us. We have God, and He is love. It's not easy.
I love that story. Well, in Tom Sr., that's who he is. That's his spirit. That's the way he rolls, because he knew he needed to get that product down to you, and in his heart he knew that it would offer some type of assistance, and obviously it did. And that's what I love about this company, because they're givers, they're carers, they're sharers. They have that vision to truly impact people on the right level, loving. And that's what it's all about. And so thank you so much for sharing. Because, again, like when you received the diagnosis and potentially the prognosis from the doctor about your husband's mental illness, I just never really understood why doctors keep doing that. That was just one thing I really shied away from. I could diagnose the worst cancer, the worst ulcerative colitis, the worst Crohn's disease, the worst hepatitis, pancreatitis, but I would just go, here's what you have. Here's what we're going to do. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we're going to work on it. We're going to do a multifactorial approach to get your health back. But I would never go, it's over. and I think that's really hard for people in today's world because they still really respect their healthcare practitioners, but sometimes they get these messages delivered to them that are so harsh that it almost shuts your brain down to like any alternative. And so I'm here along with you and along with DW and Rob to give people the education that there's an alternative from our heart and something that they could grasp upon. It's not going to hurt. It can only help. So I truly appreciate that. And DW, thank you so much for bringing her on the line. That was beautiful. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, just, what a touching story and just a tearjerker. And it kind of gets us into, there's no way I would want to close the call without jumping into a little bit of diatomic hydrogen water. And, I'm kind of excited about this because I've got kind of a dual question here with you on it. And I think you're probably going to speak to it. But, the brain can benefit from our diatomic hydrogen water, something that Mary Zook even just mentioned a second ago, keeping her husband hydrated. A very, very good friend of mine, son, got tetanus, and one of the things the doctor said is, we've got to hydrate the brain. And so I'm probably pretty sure you're going to jump into that, but can you speak to the benefits of how this amazing water is going to affect, we'll just tie it into the brain so that way we can jump into the water system real quick.
Absolutely. And I always want to include the diatomic hydrogen water system with every call that I do because it's so important to understand the bioavailability of the nutrients when you're drinking the water, because hydrogen is the smallest atom and it permeates into the cells and it opens up those pathways. It allows for the nutrients to just follow it in. Like when I think about it, in my brain, it's hydrogen's kind of waving his hand back going, come on, nutrients, follow me into the cell. So it's bringing everything in there, the antioxidants, the minerals, and the vitamins, all the nutrients that fuel the enzymatic pathways and allow for the DNA to stay stronger and allow for the cells to communicate and the vital organs to stay strong. Well, because hydrogen is such a small atom, it goes right to the blood-brain barrier, and it cruises right into the brain, into the cells and the synapses, and it allows for the fuel to then come in faster and more efficaciously. There's better communication. Hydration is really key, DW, like you said. There's so many people out there that are dehydrated. It's because we drink a lot of caffeine. We drink these diet sodas that have aspartame. It sucks more fluid out of our body and our cells. So when you do the diatomic hydrogen water, you're hydrating on a level that's very, very pure and very expensive for your cells. And when you plump up your brain, instead of having your brain shrunk down, why do you think people have hangovers? Why do you think people wake up with a caffeine headache, or they just wake up, on a Monday going, oh my gosh, I just feel cruddy. I have a headache. I'm in a brain fog. It's because you're dehydrated. So if you're going to drink the diatomic hydrogen water, it's going to hydrate you better than any other type of water out there. So it makes the nutrients more bioavailable, but it also is a scavenger of free radicals. And so those free radicals that are running around wreaking havoc on your brain and causing, beta amyloid plaques and tangles and, this bad protein to develop that decreases bioavailability of nutrients, it's going to scavenge those free radicals and get them out of there. And then it allows your body to upregulate the natural antioxidants, such as the catalase, the superoxide dismutase, and glutathione, which we all know how important those are to obviously offset the free radical damage that's going on. This water is amazing. Anything that you do with this water in a positive fashion, if you're putting good stuff in, it's going to potentiate the good stuff. It's going to be a positive cascade for your brain, for the rest of your body. It's going to give you balance. It's going to give you homeostasis. So I know that a lot of people are kind of waiting for the hydrogen system to come in. If you can, I would order it now. They've got an ability for you to do payment plans, and I think it is worth every penny. And I have to be honest, I've been drinking bottled plastic water a lot in my life, a lot. And I've completely gotten rid of that, and I've gone completely to the diatomic hydrogen water. And the first 2 days that I did it, I'm not going to lie to anybody on the line, I had a headache. And you know why? Because I was detoxing. Despite the fact that I eat healthy and I try to do the right thing with all the nutritional supplements that I've done, and I've never been majorly ill ever in my life, I'm still toxic like the rest of society because of everything in the air and certain food products and, pharmaceuticals in our water, everything. So I had a headache for the first 2 days, and now I feel amazing. So your body's going to go through a transformation when you do the water because it's going to push the toxins out. It's going to bring the good in. And once you get to that status, you're going to drink that water every day because you want to feel the way that you're going to feel. So hopefully that brings it full circle. Triangle of Life, the water, brain vitality, TSX, we've got great weight release products, and we're going to go forward next week. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week yet, so I'll surprise you guys. But I really appreciate you, DW. Mary, thank you so much for your testimonial. Thank you, Rob, for always being there to handle the controls. I love all of you in the field. Whatever I can do to support you, you just let me know.
Well, Dr. Becky, we appreciate it, and I tell you what, we are difference makers, and you want to make a difference? Get this call into as many hands as you possibly can. The second way to make a difference is you have people plug into Dr. Becky's clinic where the world is her waiting room, and she is there available to impact your lives. Everybody, you have yourself an awesome week, and we'll see you next week on Dr. Becky's Clinic.